Oh man, I wish you guys could see like how precarious my camera situation right now is. Like you're on two notebooks plus my lab manual, then a candle with like the lid still on it so it's not balanced, on a phone stand, balanced on a stress ball. What can I say? I'm a creative mastermind. Anyways, so today we're gonna be doing bio, and I'm just gonna be yapping away. And I know my background is loud. I think my dad is watching Facebook videos loudly. What can you do? What can you do? I really hope it's not that catchable on camera. Anyways, so we're gonna be going through all of the slides that I went through and printed out, and I'm realizing like how much paper this is, because this isn't the teachers giving it to us. I'm printing these myself. Woohoo! Okay, so first I'm gonna talk about evolution, and then we're gonna talk a little about phylogenies, which I guess falls under evolution, but you know, like microevolution or whatever. So, first of all, what is evolution? First of all, we all know that like Darwin is kind of like the father of evolution, but his original idea of what evolution is kind of wrong. He thought it was this thing called pangenesis, which is like a completely different theory, because he didn't know about like DNA and all that. It was like these gametides that went into the gonads, and like each organ kind of produced its own, like almost like a DNA idea. Like he was kind of getting there, but it wasn't necessarily DNA. But you know, Darwin did natural selection. We'll talk about natural selection later. But in the biological species concept, whatever, evolution is defined as a change in allele or genotype frequencies over time, which makes sense. And there are some equations and formulas for this that I will go over. But for now, let's move on. We know that evolution can happen over a long period of time, but there are also things that we can measure and look at, which is microevolution. And there's the 5 fingers of microevolution, and they didn't teach in university. I just remember this from either grade 11 or 12, one of the two. So there's mutations. There was a reason it was each of the fingers. I don't remember anymore though. Oh yeah, okay, ring. I'm going soft topic. Ring finger was sexual selection, because it was like you're getting married. That's all I remember. Anyways, okay, mutations, sexual selection, natural selection, gene flow, and genetic drift. Those are the 5. And the first I want to talk about is genetic drift, just because that's the first one in here. So there's 2 things that we kind of learn about it. There's genetic drift that falls under the bottleneck effect, and then there's adaptive radiation. So the bottleneck effect is like, let's say there's like a species of like lizards living somewhere, and then bottleneck effect happens. I need to sneeze. Oh my god. And they need to go live somewhere else. What? No. Like, let's say like they get stranded, and like 5 of them get stranded, and they go to a different like population, and they make a new population there. They all interbreed within each other. That's bottleneck effect, and that's not really the best thing to happen, because those 5 are gonna have so few like genetic amounts within them. Like they're gonna have such little genetic diversity within their children, because they started with such little genetic diversity, versus a species of like 100 lizards. You can imagine there's so many more different expressions of genes that they can all have, which is why that is so much more diverse. I need to pause and blow my nose. Give me a sec. Jeez, guys, allergies. Anyways, so that's bottleneck effect. And then adaptive radiation is like, let's say, you know, a bit more than 5. Let's say like 30 of those lizards hit this island and they've never had lizards there before. And they don't have a lot of things that like fulfill those ecological niches that exist that a lizard could fulfill. Now these lizards can spread out and all of them can start filling out different niches that a lizard could fill. Let's say some of them eat like flies and they have to have like super long. This is a bad example. I should just use the example of Darwin's Species, but I'm not going to. But let's say some of them have like super long tongues that can eat flies really good, and then some of them have super long tails that can fish really well. I don't know. They like just diversify and they fill a bunch of different niches that originally could not be fulfilled. Okay, so that's genetic drift. Next is, let's do sexual selection because that one's fun. Sexual selection happens a lot, and there's 2 different types. I don't know if we went over this in bio or not. There's 2 different types. There's male on male and there's female on male. So male on male is the males are like physically like they're fighting. They're like, we want to get with the girls, with us, whatever. Sorry, that was so good. That's sexual selection, male on male. They're fighting, and whoever's like the top dog kind of gets the girl. And then female male choice is the female sees like, oh, this lizard got the prettiest, longest tail ever. And so the females prefer lizards with long, pretty tails, and now all the males are going to want to evolve longer, prettier tails because that's what's getting selected for. My mom's calling me. Because that's what's getting selected for. This whole thing is gonna be uncut. I'm already sorry about how much I'm just gonna yabber. You don't have to watch it. I don't know who's making you watch this shit. Okay, next is, let's say, gene flow. Gene flow is like migration and immigration, and so this could happen, for example, there's 2 species, or there's 1 species, sorry, and they migrate away from each other, and now each of these 2 species, if they're like about equal in size, they're gonna have different genetics, and sometimes they might migrate back to each other, and this is where like allopatric and sympatric separation stuff comes in, but I will talk about that later because I kind of forgot. I need to look at this before I talk. But while I'm talking, we'll see. It's already been 7 minutes. Anyways, so there's that. And then there's also mutations, which just happens like to the alleles themselves. There's like nonsense mutations that don't really affect anything. There's also mutations that could be beneficial or harmful, but the harmful ones usually get, you know, selected out pretty fast, especially if it's like a very detrimental mutation. Like if it's something that's going to cause you to die, there's no way that's going to continue unless it's maybe very recessive. And even if it's very recessive, that's only going to stay in the population if it's a very big population size. If it's a smaller population, the chances of it staying are a little bit lower just because not that many people are there to express it, I think. And I'm missing natural selection. Natural selection is, you know, survival of the fittest. That's like what you think of when you think of evolution. It's like, you know, this guy is a pretty pink and all of the leaves here turn pink, so the pink bird is going to be more selected for because it can camouflage itself from predators and many other such examples. Let's see, what did I miss? So we talked about adaptive radiation. Okay, so one important example that might be on the test is penicillin. So this is just basically antibiotic resistance is what they're like trying to get at. It's like they have antibiotics that they make via penicillin, and then, oh no, we use so much of this antibiotic that now there's antibiotic resistance, which happens because out of like 500 bacteria that you kill, 1 of them or 2 of them survived, and they asexually or sexually reproduce. I forgot how bacteria reproduce. Don't kill me. I think it's asexually though. So they asexually reproduce, and now all of them are immune to that strain of the antibiotic, there's like a new immune group, and bacteria can evolve really, really quickly. So it just happens at an extremely rapid pace. Then just like penicillin is just not going to help anymore. That's why antibiotic resistance is such a problem in modern day society. And then evolution, also we saw it in COVID because it's kind of a novel virus for humans. It's never been exactly experienced by humans. While we did have SARS, it's not the exact same as COVID. So there's now many strains that can just easily evolve into all these different countries. These mutations are leading to variation, and they have different properties: virulence, dispersal, symptoms, different properties, right? Yeah. Okay, one more thing I need to mention about evolution in general is that it does not happen to individuals. It's not like survival of the fittest happens to individuals, yes, but evolution as a whole is not for individuals. It's not like you directly are like the evolutionarily best and now you're gonna evolve like a bigger pair of ears to listen better. No, your kids and their kids, and like ancestrally it goes down. It just doesn't happen to individuals. I'm explaining this so badly. What else? What else, guys? Let's see. There's phenotypical variation. Okay, I'll talk about that. So there's polymorphisms, which is like different traits that can go within different species. And there's two types. There's quantitative and there's qualitative polymorphisms. So a quantitative polymorphism is like a range of things that can happen. It's quantitative. It's based on like numbers. So for example, human height is quantitative. It's not like everyone's either 5 foot or 6 foot. You can be anywhere in between a pretty broad range of heights. Versus, let's say, the example they give here is ladybug color. There's basically two different types of ladybug colors that can have. It can be black with red spots or red with black spots. Two different types. It's not like some of each. It's one or two. That's qualitative. So it's distinct states that can go through versus a range. Now for the quantitative, the first one I talked about, there's also 3 different types of selection that can happen to it. So for example, wait, am I lying? I think I'm lying. Well, technically I guess I can merge into this topic. So what they first were talking about is these 2 graphs, which is just saying if it's a very broad distribution, it means that there can be a lot of different things that are kind of allowed to happen. So the example they give here is snail shell. So you can't tell it because it's not in color, but there's a bunch of different things and none of them are specifically being selected for. So there can be a lot of variation. Another example could be like human eye color, for example. There's not a lot of need for it to be a certain color, so it's a huge variation. I think it's a really bad example. Anyways, this photo is of a lot of shells that are all like the same color, and that's why this graph is so high and narrow. There's not that much distribution, there's not that much genetic difference, and this is a lot more dangerous for a species to have because you want to have genetic diversity to work from. So for example, here, let's say this is a brown shell, okay? If all of these are like blue and brown and green shells and suddenly the environment changes, there's like a muddy mud storm, okay, like mud rains down from the sky, suddenly they have brown alleles in the environment in which now brown ones can survive better, and they have that genetic diversity already, which means that they're able to go for that. On this side, let's say all of these are already brown, they're already in a muddy environment, and suddenly a new species of plant gets dropped in that's green, and all of these are living in a green environment. There aren't any of these that are green, so they can't just spontaneously develop into a green color. They had to have already have that genetic diversity there. So that's the main difference between the two. So this one is under a lot stronger pressure already. This one's not under that much pressure. Natural selection is not as heavy on this one. There's also the idea of nature versus nurture here, which is the difference between your phenotype and your genotype. So again, going back a little bit, your genotype is what's actually in your genetics. So your alleles that are expressing different characteristics, that's all genotypic. You can't really see that all the time because genotypes are not, it's not necessarily this one genotype for the shape of your nose, right? It's based on a lot of different things, but the phenotype is more like the physical expression of something. So yeah, there might be like a couple of different genotypes for the shape of your nose. Maybe there's like this one, and then I don't know, like the more bumpy one, for example, right? So phenotype is not just based off of your genotype. It can also be based off of your environment and the factors and conditions that you're living in. So even if your genotype, for example, is like you're gonna be 6'6", like you're gonna be tall as hell because you have that genotype, like both of your parents were really tall, you might not grow up to be so tall because you're malnourished as a child, or you're not, they're talking in the background again, you're not doing things that will usually lead to a higher height, you're malnourished, you're not exercising, things like that, leading you to only be like 5'8", which means your genotype is not perfectly expressed in your phenotype, in its nature and nurture that leads to your phenotype. It's genotype plus environmental factors that leads to the phenotype. Okay. What else? Environmental pressure is not inherited though. So let's say you have the phenotype of being kind of short, but your genotype would be like, yeah, you'd be 6'6", right? When you have kids, if they are properly nourished and fed and everything, they would still have the genetic capacity to be tall, provided they have the proper environment. So environmental problems are not passed down. This is kind of where Lamarck's theory falls short. He was the guy that was like, yo, your giraffe like pulls up its neck and it just keeps eating, and that's why all giraffe necks kind of get taller. There was an experiment run on this. I don't know if it's mentioned in here, but I think it was in the textbook, where they like had rats and then they cut the rat's tail and they made it reproduce to see if the next rat's tail would be shorter. It wouldn't be, because the rat's tail being shorter is a phenotypic difference, not a genotypic difference. So how to determine if the variation is influenced by genetics? There's another experiment that they talk about in here, which is activity in mice. So they got lazy mice and they got active mice, and they bred only active mice and only lazy mice, and to see if their offspring would also be lazy or active. And they found out that yes, mice activity is genetic. The more active mice always bred more active offspring. So this is where Mendel comes in. He's like, yo, you know, there's like dominant and recessive traits too. He does this with pea plants. We all know about Mendel. Okay, he talks about Mendelian genetics, and then he has his 3 laws of, I guess, Mendelian genetics. So there's the law of segregation, which is organisms, or most organisms, are diploid. They carry 2 sets of alleles, and they pass down 1 set to their offspring via whatever mechanism of sexual reproduction they have. Again, this only works for sexually reproductive organisms. And then these segregate during gamete formation, so each gamete only carries 1 allele per trait. Offspring receive 1 allele per parent. Makes sense. You get 1 allele from your mother, 1 allele from your father. And then he also said the law of independent assortment, which is the inheritance of one trait is independent of the inheritance of another as long as the genes for the traits are different chromosomes. This just means that, let's say this chromosome has the allele for human lip size, And can you tell I'm just looking at my face and choosing features? And this one has the allele for human toe size. These are not correlated, they're not even on the same chromosome, so they're not going to affect each other. It's not saying, oh, if you have bigger lips, you're going to have smaller feet. They're not correlated at all. They're independently assorted. There might be trends for people, but it's not actually genetic. Like, if you have, you must, they're not related to each other genetically. Again, there might be trends. Give me a second, I just sneeze again. Okay, I'm back. Give me a second. I finished my iced coffee, this ice and this water. Let's see. Okay, so what can cause genetic variation? We talked about the snails and how they have genetic variation, but what actually causes this? The main thing that causes genetic variation is always mutations. It is mutations that really produce new things, and then natural selection and sexual selection is what spreads them around, I guess. And like all the others, that's what spreads them around, natural selection mainly. But mutations is the ultimate source of all genetic variation. And then there's also recombination during sexual reproduction, where the genes kind of get like here, then they mix around and they recombine. Yes, that happens, but they don't create new things. Mutations is always what creates new things. So yeah, mutations, super powerful for this, I guess. But mutations are also pretty rare, especially beneficial mutations or ones that like actually affect things. So mutations are the one thing out of the 5 factors of microevolution that are not really factored in. Yeah, and then finally the power of selection on genetic variation, and then I have a little picture of cauliflowers and dogs. This is just saying artificial selection exists. It's pretty powerful. We know what artificial selection is. It's just humans kind of putting their hand in and then like selecting, okay, we want the dogs with the cutest smile or the broccoli with the sweetest flowers, and we're just selecting for those. So it's like kind of like natural selection, but the main difference is that there's an end product that we already have in mind for that. And then there's considerable genetic variation in populations. We know that there's gene pools. Yeah, okay. That's lecture 1. That's microevolution. Yay, we did it, guys. Yay, 20 minutes. If you're still watching, leave a comment, like, and subscribe. Don't do all that. I can name drop every single person that's still watching right now, but I won't. I know who would be doing it. Okay. Next lesson is genotype and phenotype and Hardy-Weinberg principle. Okay, let's talk about the Hardy-Weinberg principle. Basically, you know those 5 factors we talked about before? It's just saying none of those can exist. So that means no mutations, no sexual selection, no gene flow, no natural selection, and then the population has to be small, which is basically the opposite of genetic drift, I guess. That's the only one that's a little bit iffy. So Hardy-Weinberg principle basically only works if there's no natural selection. So it's kind of like a null equation. If all of these factors are happening, no evolution going on, oh no, we want to see if evolution's going on, so it's a null hypothesis. And then the rest of this is just kind of on the other things. So it's a little bit of mutation. We talked about that. Mutations can only happen in germline, which means somatic. Okay, so there's somatic cells in your body and there's germline cells. Somatic is everything except for the germline. The germline is egg and sperm cells, in humans at least. Different in plants. It can happen, and if it's in those 2, then it can get passed down. This is important again for the nature versus nurture, because you could get a mutation in your body from like, I don't know, like a nuclear fallout, and now you have a mutation in your body. That's nature, but that nature can, I guess, turn into nurture if it's in your like sperm cells, right? Okay, I'm sorry, I have allergies. I'm so gross right now. Like, my hair is greased up. Actually, it doesn't look that greasy. I showered yesterday. I should be greasy. But I feel greased up. Okay, I shouldn't do that. Okay, gene flow. We talked about migration. There's dispersal agents that facilitate and enhance gene flow, such as pollinators. So, let's say there's like a plant that has seeds inside of like apples. Okay, yeah, let's say there's an apple tree, and now there's this monkey that eats apples, and it eats up these apples, and then it moves to the next town. It walks over to the next town and shits those apple seeds out. Those pooped out dookie seeds is actually gene flow. That's how it's spreading, because it can't really move. There's barriers to gene flow too, which is not necessarily physical. Sometimes it could just be like happening. So the example they give here is uptown and downtown rats in Manhattan, and there's the same species, but they do have a genetic difference, and for some reason they don't want to interbreed with each other, which could eventually lead to speciation. For now though, the uptown downtown rats, which I'll show you the diagram of, there's like rats that live only here and only here, and they only breed with each other. I don't know why. Maybe some classist rats, I guess. We talked about genetic drift. Let's see. Okay, the final thing from this slide is the types of natural selection. So there's 3 types, and the first one is stabilizing selection. So like, I'll just show you the graph while I'm doing. Stabilizing selection looks like this. So if this is what it's like originally, it kind of turns into this. This is why I mentioned it way back earlier. So you know, it kind of peaks up in the middle, and that just means that everything is more likely to succeed if it's in that middle area. So an example of this could be, let's say, a species of birds again, and there's like seeds that are medium sized. So birds that have really big beaks or really small beaks don't really want to like, if you have big beaks, that costs a lot of like energy to make, and the small beaks can't even eat the medium ones. So if you're on the middle, you're honestly doing the best. Another example is directional. So it's like, if this was your original graph, it turns into like this. This one's pretty obvious. It's like, now let's say all the seeds are big, all of them are gonna big, right? Final one is disruptive. So it looks like this. It just means that the middle is a divot. Over here. The reason this one happens is, let's say we have the stabilizing selection and then all of the middle seeds are done, right? Now there's only big seeds and small seeds. Having a medium-sized beak would not be an advantage anymore, because you can't eat either of them. Let's say you can't eat either of them, right? Now people with really big beaks and really small beaks are an advantage, because they can eat seeds, right? That's why it's directional. And disruptive. That's why it's disruptive. And disruptive selection also has the highest likelihood of turning into 2 different species. Like, speciation events are most likely to happen under disruptive selection, which makes sense because you have 2 species that are already pretty different from each other, or at least a trait that's pretty different from each other. Yeah, that's lecture 2. I guess I covered a lot of lecture 2 stuff when I was on my lecture 1. Phewie. It's actually lecture 3 technically, because I started on 2. Anyways, lecture 4, Burger King foot lettuce. Let's see, what are we yapping about here? Stabilizing selection, I just talked about it. Let's see, sexual cannibalism. Okay, yeah. So there's something called the heterozygote advantage, which just means that, you know, there's like alleles that are, you know, there's like the dominant allele, there's the recessive allele. Some things have like a heterozygote advantage, which means that having the heterozygous combination even though technically you're expressing the dominant allele, it's not really that cut and dry. It's not really that like Mendelian anymore, I guess. So you're technically expressing the dominant one, but not as strongly. It's weird. It's not like what we learned before, where if it's dominant, it only expresses the dominant. And the main example for this is malaria and sickle cell anemia. Anemia? Anemia. I'm saying it wrong. Okay. So, sickle cell anemia. I'm saying it wrong. How do I say this? Wait, give me a sec, guys. Anemia. Okay. So, anemia gets pronounced as a recessive. So if you, sickle cell anemia is a dominant trait. It's AA, and then malaria can get your ass if you're lowercase a, which means if you have AA. Oh my god, what am I doing? Let me just show you what I wrote down here. If you have this, you're gonna die to sickle cell. If you have this, you're gonna die to malaria. If you have this, you kind of get a little bit of both of the best parties and you're fine. There's a reason for this, is because sickle cell anemia makes your actual cells so they can't get infected by malaria, but also malaria will kill you if you have perfect cells, etc., etc. It's a long-winded explanation. I'm sure you've already heard of this because you start learning this in grade 10. I'm just saying, we all knew about it. I'm just saying, don't shoot me, no, you're so sexy, don't kill me. I moved the stress ball and I changed the position of you guys a bit. Keep the stress ball. What if I turn this into an ASMR video instead? Don't look at my nails, they're so ugly. Oh god, don't look. Don't even look. Ew, god, what is that? Anyways, what am I doing? What am I doing with this study? Okay, so we talked about that, and then there's also this thing called negative frequency depending selection. They only give one example for this, and I wish I had more examples because this is cool. So there's this fish, and it has like this like tilt mouth, so like it eats on this side. So if you're on this side of the fish, you kind of have a better chance of living because it'd have to flip around and then eat you. So you want to be on this side of the fish, right? And there's two different categories of this fish. So some of them have their mouth on this side, some of them on this side. I should probably use the pinky instead. But they have their mouth on this side, some on that side, right? I got a message that said maximum file size reached 4 gigabytes, but that's all I saw. Okay, 30-minute video, too long, I guess. I'll just send it to my computer and delete it. Anyways, so 2 fishies, right? And the fishy on this side, if 1 year there's more of this, the fish, no, they're like, shit, we cannot be on this side of the damn fish. They're gonna eat our ass, right? So these fish learn. So the next year, these ones survive less because all the fish know to be on this side. If all the fish are on this side, that means this motherfucker. Wait, was I been doing it on the same side? No, okay. Then this guy is like, you are on my side now. Now these ones get naturally selected for because they get to eat more. If you get to eat more, you live. And if you live, you reproduce. Natural selection. And then now the fish know not to be on this side, they go to this side, now this one has the advantage again, right? Okay. Let me show you the freaky fish. Yeah, awesome. Okay, let's see what else we have. Um. Okay, natural selection cannot fashion perfect organisms. You need to have the genetics for it. We talked about this. This means there's constraints on adaptive evolution. That means sometimes vestigial structures will appear. Because you can't just select out some things if it's not really bothering you. For example, wisdom teeth, your appendix, goosebumps, all those are vestigial traits that haven't hurt people enough that it gets completely filtered out. Yeah. Okay, everybody, go take a break. Go take a break. Go take a break. Because I need to think for a second. Yeah, I'm not cutting this. I'm just gonna sit here and think for a second. So go take a break. Okay, welcome back. I'm done. This shit's about Darwin and his voyages. Who cares? This is on the test. It's over for me. Oh yeah. Oh, is this angle better, Loki? What if I talk from here? Is this profesh? 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 Okay. Darwin got on some boat and he saw the Galapagos. This other guy, Wallace. Wallace? I should check his name. I think it's Wallace. Holy printed. Okay, whatever. Wallace saw the same thing on a different island in like Malaysia. The two of them both came up with natural selection. This guy emailed Darwin. He emailed Darwin. He sent him a text via pigeon or something. And it was like, yo, I figured out something cool. Darwin was like, what? That's literally my theory that I've been developing for years. Let me just hit you up and we publish this shit together, and then like a year later he published The Origin of Species. That's it. That's all we need to know. Also, he had a black friend and he got like anti-racist because of it, but he was really sexist. And so The Origin of Man was like really sexist. Yeah, Alfred Russel Wallace. Perfect. Okay, done. That was lecture 4. Lecture 5. Microevolution, 5 laws, 5 retrodictions. Okay, so this is more about Alfred Russel Wallace. And then resource availability and adaptive radiation. Cool, we know about adaptive radiation. Let's move on to other lectures that I only have on my computer because I skipped them. Don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone I skipped it. I revised. Don't worry, everybody. Oh wait, I have this one. Give me a sec, guys. Everybody leave a comment. How was your day? Hey, should I put Subway Surfers under this whole thing? Yo, that'd be so funny. Should I? That would be really funny, actually. Not even gonna lie. I have lecture 5. I don't have 6 or 7. Why is that? Oh. Y'all, look at this stupid ass monkey. I don't want to change my thing. My setup. Okay. I'm gonna slowly turn you and I'll turn you back. Did you see it? Did you see it? Did you see the stupid ass monkey? Okay, you did? I'm so happy. Okay. Oh, this shit's about Alfred Russel Wallace. Does that mean I have the monkey printed? How is this lecture? Okay. Sorry guys. I'm a mess. I'm a mess. I'm a loser. I forgot where that song is from. Okay. I found the slide that I missed, guys. So now we're talking about how there's chromosomes. As we know, humans have sorry guys, I think I lost the plot. I've been yapping, okay? I've been yapping. Humans have chromosomes. It's kind of all that matters. Okay. Predictions based on evolution. If life originated on Earth in the distant past, we should see evidence in the fossil record. The fossil record is incomplete because fossils are kind of hard to come across, because there's very specific situations that cause a fossil to fossilize, as to be in proper like muddy kind of sediment, and also like harder creatures fossilize a lot better than like a soft worm. Like a crab is going to fossilize a lot better than a worm, right? Because it's like soft. It's hard to fossilize that. And then there's also something called pre-mineralization, which is like kind of fossilization. It's more like the entire thing is kept. This can happen to the, like, there's like wood that can happen to, I don't want to turn it on, it's not that cool of an image. There's like imprints, which is like, there's like, for example, like a really fluffy dog dies, and then you can see like the imprint of its fur, so you know it was fluffy, right? Things can get amberized, which is like mostly insects. Yeah. And then there's geological dating, which happens from either carbon-14 or from potassium-argon, isometric half-life dating, or uranium with shredded lead. So carbon-14 dating is just, and nitrogen 14 turns into carbon-14. We check the half-life of that. Then there's also radioactive dating, which is certain time spans, and I should probably write down those time spans. Remind me of that. I didn't remember this. The second prediction for evolution is that we should be able to see through the fossil record the like in between species, right? So like between like a dinosaur and bird, we should see like the like in between species. Makes sense, okay? And then we have homologous structures and transitional forms. You know what a homologous structure is? You know, like the pentadactyl limb that evolved for different things, versus an analogous structure like sharks and whales all swimming like this, even though they evolved completely separately. Okay, good. Transitional forms, as we talked about, and we should see retrodictions. So retrodiction is something that basically only makes sense in the light of evolution. You can't really like see it beforehand. So for example, a whale, big ass fish, right? It has these like limbs that like you're like, what the hell are those limbs inside of it for? It's a pelvis and it's a hind limb, and it's just saying like, because we know they evolved kind of from like wolves, like that area. Whales had those hind limbs that like originally were like this and they used to walk, and they curled inside of its like flat body. And then vestigial characteristics we talked about, and there's also vestigial characteristics in embryo, in the embryonic form of a lot of different animals, especially mammals and whales and sharks and stuff. They look very similar, right? And that's the forelimb that I talked about in the whale, with the hind limb and the pelvis. Yeah, I'm so gross and snotty and disgusting, guys. Yeah, that's it for that one. Okay, got phylogeny, we got, let's see, yeah, okay, we don't have much left actually. So phylogeny, pretty easy to understand. We have a phylogenetic tree here, that's common unk, and then these are sister taxa, and then these are sister taxa. Okay, so in a phylogeny there's three different things. There's paraphyletic, polyphyletic, and monophyletic. So monophyletic means that everything includes unc's kids. So, for example, taxa A, B, and C here are all monophyletic because they all share a common ancestor. Right? Right. You get me, right? Now, taxa B and C are paraphyletic. Wait. I don't want to be lying right now. What? It's gone. My notes are gone. Okay, but I think I'm right. I'm gonna check. Sorry guys, I don't know why I got like so lost in the last like 10 minutes. I was fine and then I'm like tweaking. Anyways, paraphyletic, P-A-R-A, they all come from a common unc, common ancestor, but not all of unc's kids are included. So if we're saying that this is big unc, okay, this is a paraphyletic, like these two, because they're from the same unc, but this guy is not included, okay? Polyphyletic is they're branched together sometimes for some reason. It doesn't really matter, but we're combining two things. So for example, let's say this one, and this one. Okay, those three. This one's paraphyletic because they're not from the same common unc. These ones are from here and these ones are from here. But we're still pairing them together because maybe they all share a common trait. Okay, so like birds and bats, for example, are polyphyletic. And the easiest way to remember this is para. Think like paralyzed. Think, uh-oh, that's not good. You don't get all of the kids. I don't know. Yeah. So some important new terms for this part is, let's see, homoplasy. That's basically just a similarity that is not due to shared ancestry. So the way I like to remember it is homoplasy is kind of like convergent evolution, where it's like it's not doing the same thing. It's like eyes. You know how eyes evolve several times? That's convergent evolution. It's also homoplasy. There's also homoplasies that aren't convergent evolution. It could just happen as like a retrodiction, but it's kind of complicated. You don't have to worry about it. Yeah, so this could be similar function, different origin, right? Okay, good. Traits can either be ancestral or derived. That just means, okay, big unc. Big unc is blue as hell, okay, and squishy. And then let's say over time, the kids start to become harder and harder and harder. Fine, but like let's say one of them grows the leg off the side. And this is such a bad example. That leg is a derived trait because it didn't exist in the original species. I don't know why I would choose that example. Okay, anyways. Okay, let me tell you a better one. Let's say this is the unc, and then at some point, some evolutionary switch happened where the cap is gone, right? Now this is a new species. It can't reproduce with a version of the cap on. Now this is a derived trait. Not having the cap is a derived trait. If there was one of these things that came from a very similar lineage that had the cap, but it had something different about it too, it had this at the back, right? This is a also derived characteristic, but this is an ancestral trait. Yeah, easy. I need to go take a reactin. I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. My allergies are so bad today. They were fine the last few days, but I think it's because it was raining. Regardless, also got some water. Yummy. Awesome. Okay, as I was saying, we have homoplasies, and then we also have synapomorphies, which is a derived trait that is shared amongst a new group. So it's a derived trait, and then it's also a shared derived trait. So this is kind of viewed as evidence of the common ancestry within a group. So, for example, milk production is a synonymory of all mammals, okay? Because that evolved for mammals, and now that's a common trait that's shared amongst all of mammals, or most of mammals. And then derived traits are also more helpful if there's an outgroup. So an outgroup for mammals would be something that's very closely related, but it doesn't have all of the same traits. So you can actually see like where all the differences would emerge. Okay, so yeah, here's another example of monophyletic groups, paraphyletic groups, whatever, right? So you can see over here, that's a monophyletic group. This is a paraphyletic group. This is a polyphyletic group. So that's birds and bats. That's of these guys because it doesn't share all of these guys. And then it's monophyletic because it's just starting from here. And we see that we cut it off there, or everything would have to be monophyletic at some point, right? Yeah. So again, some very important things to remember is the difference between homologous and analogous. So similar origin versus similar function, but no similar origin. So homologous means that they evolved, they probably don't usually do the same thing, like the embryos, right? Versus analogous traits, which is a similar function. Bird versus bat wings. Homoplasy and convergent evolution, which falls kind of into analogous, I guess, which is two or more organisms independently evolving the ability to do the same thing. This is and convergent evolution, basically the same thing, very similar to analogous evolution. And then ancestral versus derived traits, we just talked about it, and synamorphies, which is shared derived trait. Yay! Okay, I think low-key that's all of the important ones that I wanted to talk about today. Yeah. And also, I'm sick of talking. It's been like, what, 45 minutes? Probably around that, maybe even 50. Okay, so, if anybody actually watched all of that, I salute you. Bye. Toodaloo.